Hey everybody, this is part 2 of the episode about Mike's first trip to the camp. If you didn't listen to the last episode, part 1, I'd go ahead and do that now. For this one, we pick up where we left off, the night before Pennsylvania opening day rifle season.
Yep. So make sure to listen along to part 2 as I venture into the woods on the hunt for the very first time and attempt to haul a couple deer with me on the way back out. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and subscribe to the podcast to make sure you stay up to date with every adventure.
Alright, thanks for giving us a listen, and without further ado, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the East Coast Hunt, Fish, Hike podcast. I'm Pat Carroll, hunter, fisherman, and general outdoor enthusiast. Join me and my brother Mike as we share tactics, recount stories, and plan our upcoming outdoor adventures. Welcome to the East Coast Hunt, Fish, Hike podcast, your home for stories and tactics in the woods and on the water. I'm Pat Carroll, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and co-host, Mike. How's it going, Mike?
It's going well. It's going well. Things down here in Georgia are going really well. As we're recording this, it's kind of getting into the mid-September uh, time period down here, which means that mornings are no longer in like the humid upper 70s and making its way into the mid to upper 90s by the end of the day. It's kind of like starting off in the high 50s and rolling into like a very comfortable, less humid lower 80s. So temperatures are starting to make their way into what ends up being like a decently long fall season down here. And man, the weather is just so nice. So things are going well. Things are going well down here in Georgia. How things going up there, Pat?
Oh, doing pretty good. Not certainly cooling off a little bit up here as well. Not as much, not as drastic a difference as you guys are seeing, but we're seeing, 50s and 60s in the morning, which is always that kind of nice, cool morning. Always kind of reminds me of the fall and gets me excited for the hunting season coming up. So that's always
Yep.
always a good time. So this episode is actually part 2 of the hunting trip that Mike and I went on a number of years ago. Now, if you haven't had the chance to listen to part 1, this might be a good chance to do so. Because for this one, we're going to pick right up where we left off on the morning of opening day. A morning where you can see your breath and there's nothing but opportunity waiting for you. But first, let's push that social media. So we do have an Instagram. That Instagram handle is at ec_huntfishhike_pod. So please follow along with us there, and rate and review. Tell us how we're doing. It's the best way to move us up the charts, to extend our reach to more listeners, and also a great way to let us know what you guys want to hear about. Because obviously, the more you tell us what you want to hear about, the better we can do at talking about those things and catering to your interests. So that's really the best way that you're going to get to hear what you want to hear. So really, it's a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Rate, review, subscribe if you haven't done that yet. And we are here for you guys. So let us know in the comments. Let us know in some messages what it is that you want for us to talk about, and we'd love to dive into it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as always, we're going to go into a little bit of our recent outdoor endeavors. So I'm going to throw this one to Mike first today. See what he's been doing outside. Mike, what are some recent outdoor endeavors you've been getting into over there?
Yeah, so it's less in the kind of the woods, but it is still very much outdoors. We are very much into football season here down in Georgia. And so not only has professional football started up, not only has college football started up, which is a very big deal down here in the South, but the high school program where I teach and coach has started up, and the seventh grade football team that I'm the head coach for is well underway. So we've had
Mm.
our jamboree, we've had 2 games. Our team is still undefeated as of right now. We've got a tough opponent coming up on this upcoming Saturday. We have Saturday morning games, and so for me, getting outdoors is every day, and it's out there on the football field. And so I'm out there running the triple option with these seventh graders, and working on plays on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So it's very active, and I get my more than my steps in every day, because I'm out there essentially like running through plays and everything, and it's awesome. It's so rewarding, but it is also very, very exhausting. And so we're well underway with that. We've been into our season now for like a month and a half, and so things are going really well with that. This past weekend, my my youngest, my 1 year old, just turned one. And so
Ooh,
we had like a barbecue, we had a party at our house. We had like 30 to 40 people that were there,
wow.
just like, and Pat, you've been here. The house isn't it's not small, but but 40 people is a
Oh
lot.
yeah, it's a lot.
We were really praying for some good weather so that we
Mm-hmm.
could have people kind of like out in the backyard. We had some lawn games, we had cornhole, we had the soccer nets up for the kids, and
Nice.
we were really hoping that we were going to be able to get some good weather, and we did. So I spent the day before like doing a whole bunch of meat smoking. I've got an offset grill, and so I did. I did right after our football game. Actually, I got home and pulled out the smoker. I did 2 full pork butts. I did 3 full racks of ribs. I did about like 50 to 70 wings.
Mm.
I smoked meatballs for the first time, which was a fun adventure. I did like hot dogs, which actually ended up being chicken hot dogs,
Ooh.
because I didn't read the package carefully, but they were actually really good. They're actually really, really good. But at the end of the day, we had like beautiful weather. It was so awesome. We had people and kiddos like running all over the yard. We had people in the house. Pat and my's mom and dad came down actually to visit down here, so they were here. They got to see the kiddos, and I mean, man, it was just spectacular. It was just so good. Like I wish actually that I could have taken a step back a little bit earlier on in the midst of the party to like really appreciate it. I was very much like in the throes of it, trying to get food on the table and everything, but just like taking a step back was I did have a chance to do a little bit of that, and it was so cool to be able to see all the people outside enjoying the nicer weather. And so while it's not necessarily an outdoor activity, I mean, it actually is. Hosting 40 is an outdoor activity, and it was really awesome. So yeah, that's been kind of my outdoor stuff, I guess, for lack of a better word. But Pat, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, hosting is definitely an endeavor for sure. We've done a few of those kind of get-togethers, and it is always, it's always busier than you expect it to be. But for, me, outdoor endeavors, right, aside from, the standard, kids soccer picking up, being able to get outside with them, we did actually have the opportunity to get outside and head up to New Hampshire for a little getaway weekend, which was a lot of fun. So we head up there. We were staying in a town called Littleton, so it's a little bit further north than our usual stomping ground around Lincoln, around the White Mountains.
Okay.
This area is like probably, if you're familiar with New Hampshire, a little bit past Cannon, a little bit past Franconia Notch. And we stayed in a nice little condo up there, trying to like check out the town, check out the area. There's a lot of really good restaurants and stuff up there. So we had the opportunity to head up there, hit some really good breweries. There's a Shilling Brewery up there, which is really good. And we took the kids up to Santa's Village, which I'd never been to before. So for those who aren't aware, Santa's Village is kind of like an amusement park up in New Hampshire. It's got like roller coasters and amusement park rides, and
Okay.
obviously there's like reindeer that you can go see because it's all like Santa themed, right? So it's like everything like the teacups are like the little drummer boy, and like like the Dumbo-esque ride is like the flying elves, right? So all of the everything's kind of like Santa themed, but it was really good. I mean, I'd never been there before, but they really do a really good job up there at Santa's Village. Didn't really have any lines or anything like that. Everything was clean and operating really well. We did get stuck in the rain up there during while we were
Yeah.
there, which was a little bit less than ideal. I also forgot the jackets for the kiddos, so that
Oh,
made it even less ideal. So we did have to spring for new sweatshirts for the kids. Um, which was fine. It was an expense we weren't planning on having, but at least the sweatshirts were nice, so it was kind of like
yeah.
a kind
Mhm.
of a win in that regard. We did also have the opportunity to do a little bit of hiking when we were up there too. So there's a couple hikes, like shorter hikes around Cannon. One of them is Artist Bluff, and the other is Bald Mountain. And both of these are like less than a half mile, but they're like kind of steep, and then you get like really rewarding views at the top.
Ooh, awesome.
And yeah, so it was like perfect for the kiddos because, they don't have to put in like that much effort in order to get like a really rewarding view at the top. So,
Yeah,
so it was really cool because they both hiked up all the way by themselves, did an awesome job. Super proud of them. They hiked to the top of Artist Bluff, and then they wanted to keep hiking, so we hiked along the top of that little mountain for a little bit further than we had originally anticipated, and really got some good hiking in there, which was great. And we finished off that day, and the kids said, "Hey, you know what? We can do a little bit of hiking tomorrow too." So we actually did. We did Artist Bluff and a little bit of extra hiking on the first day, and then we came back the next day and did Bald Mountain, which is a very it's like basically attached to Artist Bluff, but it's like kind of the same sort of deal. It's a short, like less than a half mile up, but you get like really rewarding views. So the kids were super proud. They got to get up there all by themselves. They got to do some
that's
like
awesome.
scrambling on rocks and stuff like that, which they haven't been able to do before, and they really enjoyed it. So all in all, super super fun. Really good to get out there and do some hiking with the kiddos, and really awesome to get up into the White Mountains for some of that. So really
Yeah.
really good for outdoor endeavors for me.
Yeah, I feel like your girls are getting to the age now where you can really make that happen without it being like a whole fiasco, right? I feel like they're getting to the age, and I'm sure there are still fiascos to come,
Oh yeah.
but I feel like they're getting to the age where like doing something like that is doable, and I'm just looking ahead to right now. My oldest is the age of your youngest,
Yeah.
and my youngest is one. So we are like just now starting to walk. I mean,
Yeah,
we are definitely putting steps together, but it's far from ever being able to like successfully do a hike, much less be able to do a hike without it like dissolving into sheer pandemonium. So the fact that you're able to kind of like make a hike like that work, I feel like your girls are at a doable age for that, where they can be pushed and they can kind of like reap some of the benefits and get some of the rewards from that. And that's just kind of like around the bend for us. We're not quite
yeah,
there yet, but we're still kind of in the throes of it now. But we're looking ahead to when that's going to be possible for us too.
for sure. Yeah, no, you just know that it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, my kiddos are 6 and 3 right now, so they're just this is the first time we've really been able to do any sort of like kind of real hiking other than just like walking along like a path in the woods, and it was really pretty great. We were
Yeah.
already talking about when can we get up there again. Is there any other hikes that are kind of like this,
Mhm.
that we can do with the kiddos? Been looking up a few, and it's always tricky to gauge like how far do we think they can go before it, as you said, dissolves into pandemonium, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Well,
trying to toe the line there without it becoming a problem. But we'll
yeah.
see. I'll keep everybody posted as we go. See if we end up doing another hike this fall as we move into the September October timeframe here. All
Yeah.
right. So that's it for our recent endeavors. So now it's time for us to pick up kind of where we left off. So for those who are following along, we had traveled the 8 hour drive to the camp. That is the hunting camp that our family has up in like north central Pennsylvania. It's about an 8 hour drive from where we are. We had stopped for food. We'd stopped for beer and hunting licenses. We'd unpacked all the gear, gotten a little bit of sleep. And then the following day we had woken up, did some hanging of the tree stands, helped hang tree stands, did some scouting walks around the woods in order to determine what the, where we thought the deer might be. And that's basically where we were, right, Mike? I mean, I think that's pretty much where we were. We were painting the picture of the camp,
Yeah.
getting an
Mhm.
idea of what that looks like, and that was pretty much where we were as we left from part one.
Yeah, kind of leading up to that opening day morning when we were heading out onto the porch and then making our way out for the hunt. We some of us didn't get sleep, and I know that I had talked about the level of snoring that was surrounding me when I was up in the cots was something that kept me from sleep. But I also was just buzzing so much from just being amidst the camp and being kind of in the energy and in that like aura that is that like hunting vibe, because it is a vibe,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just buzzing off of it, and so I like didn't really sleep a wink the night before. The night before opening day. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was the kind of my whole like my excuse, if you will, for being able to go on this trip was that I had told, you might remember from the last episode, I had told my college professor that I was going to be going into like a new crossing cultures, into a new kind of area, into kind of this atmosphere of the hunt, and that I wanted to kind of like explore that. And my professor had given me the go ahead to miss class as a result. And I can remember pulling up my computer that I had brought with me, using some sort of a hotspot because the internet is not very good at the camp, and sending an email to my professor while I was there saying that like, hey, I think that there's actually something here that I wanna kind of dive into a little bit in my writing. And so I can remember sending that email and then before opening day, kind of like taking down some notes and doing a little bit of writing, and immediately knew that this was going to be a piece that I wanted to include in my like senior portfolio, because it was that there was so much richness that was there that I wanted to kind of like dig into. And I'd originally written a piece for this class, for this crossing cultures class, that had gone um, up to Salem, Massachusetts. I had taken the commuter rail up there, and I had dressed like Clark Kent, and I had gone to Haunted Happenings, which is a like a big kind of like Halloween celebration, if you will, in Salem, Massachusetts, where obviously Halloween is like a really big deal. And I'd like interviewed a couple of people, and I made the decision while I was there, kind of on the eve of opening day, to kind of drop that haunted happenings piece and to replace it with this hunting piece. And so I was doing a little bit of writing there. Tried to head in early, and that didn't pay off for me because I was too excited, and as a result of the snoring that was going on all around me, I wasn't able to really get much sleep. But nevertheless, I was geared up and ready to go early that next morning. So that brings us up through kind of like the departure, getting ready to go and waking up that next morning on opening day.
Yeah, so I know for opening day, generally speaking, at least in the camp that we were, we set our alarms for 4 a.m. That was the time. You definitely didn't want to be the last one getting out of bed because, one, you'd be late. Two, there might not be enough food left over for you if you were the one get rolling out of bed later than everybody else. The alarm, you roll over in your sleeping bag, your alarm goes off, and you immediately smell the smell of like a full breakfast, like home fries,
Yes.
eggs, sausage, bacon, and that's ultimately what you're waking up to when you at the camp for opening day. And ultimately the plan, as you wake up is to eat, get ready, get your clothes on, and then like basically head right out to the front porch so that you're not starting to get overheated, because obviously the camp nice and warm, you got a full belly full of breakfast, but you're putting on all these layers in order to stay warm when you're out in the elements. So the waiting place ends up being the porch as we wait and gather for other folks to get ready and head out into the cars and out into the woods.
Yeah, and so what I can kind of remember for this is that I merely got up. rather than waking up. I kind of just like got out of bed and rolled over because again I didn't really sleep all that much that night before. But what what I did notice is that, and this is something that I've kind of noticed quite a bit with our family, is despite going to bed on like the earlier side, I was definitely one of the people going to bed on the earlier side. And I can remember I had gone up to do a little bit of writing before going to bed. I'm always very impressed by our family's ability to rise early, even though they're going to bed quite late, and even though the drinks and the conversations were going well into the later hours in the evening. I'm always impressed by our family's ability to still be able to get up and rise early that next day. But nevertheless, we got up, and our dad, Pat, and my dad was, of course, at work in the kitchen fixing up the breakfast. And so to say that this was just like a full breakfast doesn't, I don't think, do it justice. I mean, it is always home fries, sausage, bacon, scrapple, which is a Pennsylvania delicacy. My father-in-law is from Pennsylvania as well, and they call it butcher patty,
Huh.
which is I mean, we grew up calling it every part of the pig but the oink, which is just because the butcher would basically just take everything that was on the table and just slide it right off into what would be called butcher patty, or into scrapple. And so there was always scrapple that was there, being right in the midst of Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Um, you could never get away with just saying, "Oh, however it is that you're making your eggs." You had to give an egg order, whether it was scrambled, whether it was over easy. You could not get away with just saying, "Oh, whatever it is that you're making," which is something that like that was. And this isn't just unique to the camp. I think that this is dad. I think that this is our dad that like that always is kind of like pulling out all the stops when it comes to breakfast. And so anytime that we're up visiting up north, and we'd be visiting either like our grandparents or visiting my parents, I always have to like tell my family, I have to tell Catherine, my wife, like, hey, you have to have your eggs like ready. Like you have to know what your egg order is. You can't get away with just saying whatever it is that you're cooking. You got to be decisive. You got to make your decision. And the eggs is the first of those decisions on those days. It is, however, what I can say is that is where it is that I see myself in future years, whether it's alongside dad, or I mean, I just talked with you about how we were hosting for 30 or 40 people,
Hmm.
and I love doing that. I
Oh yeah.
love being in the kitchen, and firing up the pans, and getting the whole breakfast and everything ready. And I think that there is a little bit of martyrdom that I think dad takes on with that. But I'm learning more and more that it's not just martyrdom; it's something that he loves to do.
Yeah.
And I similarly love to do that too. So I can definitely see myself on future opening days, being up there at the camp, and being right there in the kitchen alongside him. But then, as you're saying, kind of like clothes and equipment were laid out the night before so that they'd be ready, and
Hmm.
then we went out onto the porch. A lot of the stand sitters went out in their cars a little bit earlier on, and we waited a little bit longer because we were going to be pushing and driving with the well, not driving like car wise driving, but because we were going to be walking through the woods and driving the deer. We waited a little bit longer and went with our close family friend. We call him Uncle Gabe. And so we went with him to get ourselves ready, waited for him on the porch, before taking off.
Yeah. So ultimately, that brings us up to opening day. So at that point, right, we're ready. We're on the porch. As we were counted last time, right? Mike and I, we didn't have hunting licenses, right? So we aren't really allowed to hunt per se, but we could be a member of the hunting party, right? We just had to make sure that we were with a licensed hunter during the day. So as long as we were, with somebody who was licensed, then it was kind of a non issue. So we got out opening day. Somebody would walk us around. We would allow us to scout a little bit, see if we could see any deer sign. Um, and then if anybody got a deer, right, then we would be the folks who would be around in order to drag them out or recover that deer. Obviously in those situations, having extra sets of hands is certainly helpful, right? Um, At this stage in my hunting career, I basically had no idea what goes into finding a good hunting spot. So it was, one, it was a little bit eye opening in that regard, being able to look around the woods, be able to start seeing what goes into a good spot and what doesn't. I do kind of wish I had the knowledge I have now, being able to walk through those woods, with the eyes and the mind that I have now, because I would be able to see, more specifically why areas were good for certain stands, why we would push one area over another, because basically when I was there then, I was just walking through the woods. It was more or less a glorified hike. They'd say you walk
Yeah.
in this direction, and you'll come out here, and it's like that's great, but now if I were to walk exactly those steps, I'd be able to start putting things together as to why we were walking in that area, and none of that was ever really like conveyed to me. I mean, I'm sure there was a reason, right? I mean, there's a reason that these drives or these walks are done the way that they are, but having that information would have been really really cool. But to start off the morning, ultimately our job was basically to sit in the car. We drove the car out to one particular area, and I remember just basically being told, okay, you guys hang out in the car for a little bit. The hunters are going to go into the woods, wait for the sun to come up, see if we see anything, and then basically they'll come back and get us. Us not having licenses, it's still being dark. That was pretty much the only thing we could do at that point, especially, trying to maintain and be safe in the woods. There's other hunters in there. It's dark, right? That was ultimately the best option at that stage, and that's pretty much how we watched the sun come up on the first opening day.
Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of dial it back here for a second, Pat, because part of what you were talking about with wishing that you had kind of like the mind and the experience that you have now when you were walking through those woods at the in I think it was like 2012 or 2013, whenever 2012 when this hunting trip was going on. I'm gonna make a comparison here to I've talked a number of times on the podcast about guided fishing trips that I go on,
Hmm.
right? And I think that there's kind of a similarity that's there where you're being told like, all right, take this bait and put it at this depth or put it here in like cast it out there. But there's so much that goes into kind of like knowing what the depth is, knowing where the fish are,
Hmm.
knowing why it is that that's the location that it is that you're using, that I'm so much more curious about now that I've been doing my own fishing. And I talk a lot about how like yes, it's like I love those guided fishing trips because you're just hauling in so much fish, and it's so exciting, especially when there's multiple lines that are going down at the same time. There's just really nothing like it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like there's also something to being able to get out there in your kayak or in your boat and being able to find the spot that you think the fish are going to be, and then being able to haul in fish because of that kind of like scouting and because of that scoping and because you're seeing signs and because you think that the currents are going in a particular direction and the time of day is such and the water temperature is such that you're going to be able to catch a fish somewhere, and then you do,
Yeah.
and so I see some similarities with how it is that I talk about the guided fishing trips, because in a similar way you're being told to kind of like walk here, look here, and do this. And on those trips, it's like, all right, put your line here, put it at this depth, and you're going to catch a fish.
Yeah.
And sure
No.
enough, you do catch lots of fish, but
Yeah.
there's something to doing it on your own.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I feel like when in those guided fishing trip and situations, right, it is still an accomplishment to catch that fish, right? It's still an accomplishment to reel it in, but you don't have that added accomplishment of being able to say that you found it, right? This isn't your
Yeah,
spot. This isn't the area that you tracked down, figured out that this is why the fish were here, and then you caught the fish. It adds that extra element of success, and ultimately like an extra element of fun. I mean, if that's what you're into, right? I mean, there's
yeah,
plenty of folks who will be perfectly happy to go on guided fishing trips and catch buckets of fish, right? And
yeah.
likewise for hunting, right? Same sort of idea. If somebody's going to say, hey, go sit in this stand and you'll shoot a deer, there's tons of people who will do exactly that and be super happy about it. But at the same time, there is that other level of being able to determine where the deer is going to be, and there's also a lot of fun in that, and a lot of a lot to say about being able to do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so, to kind of put us back now at the car before making our way through this first part of opening day, I can definitely remember being by the car, kind of like getting out of the car, just the two of us, Pat and I, before our uncle Gabe walked us through the first of kind of like the spots that we were going to be doing this drive, which was this like wooded knoll. I can't remember exactly what it was that it was called, or like what it's labeled as at on the topographical map, but it was definitely this like wooded knoll, that we were starting to walk our way through. And so the walking needed to be, you couldn't be making any noise, obviously, couldn't talk with one another, but and we walked kind of like in a line to make sure that I could always keep, I was behind Pat, so I was always trying to keep my brother in front of me. And so we were walking through silently, I was trying to keep Pat in view. I'm all bundled up, so I'm nice and warm, but it is cold outside. So it was like cold enough to be able to see your breath, and you get that little bit of a bite against your skin. And I will say that I think that is one of my favorite ever outdoor memories, is walking through those woods, on the drive for this hunt. That I wasn't even holding a rifle, I wasn't even holding a bow, and being out there and being in the outdoors and just being amidst the nature was just so powerful to me that it stays and remains in my memory as one of my favorite outdoor memories. Was being just in the woods in the midst of this hunt.
Yeah, no, I mean it really is. I mean, there's something to be said about being in the woods, in the calm, in during hunting season. I mean, there's a lot of peace to be found there, and that's what keeps me coming back. That's for sure. But in this situation, right, for me, just starting out as a hunter, I mean, to me, it felt kind of like a glorified hike. We were just kind of walking through the woods, trying to get from point A to point B, seeing if we see anything. I do remember seeing a couple does run up, but nothing, obviously nothing. We were hunting bucks, so I don't think anybody in our party had any doe tags at the time. So, we just watched them walk through, and then continued on until we got through the area that we were trying to push through. And then I'm pretty sure after that we got word, from one of our uncles that somebody had shot a deer across the hollow. So then for us, kind of the work started, right? So we started moving in that direction. We went back to the car, drove probably I'm going to say it, but as the crow flies, it probably couldn't have been more than like a half mile to 3/4 of a mile, maybe even less than that. But in order to, get there, we would have had to have gone like down a mountain over a stream.
Yeah,
So really, ultimately, the way to get there was to take the car, and that was probably, I'm gonna say, a 2 or 3 mile drive with the car. Not too long, obviously, but certainly more than you would have wanted to walk. Um, yeah, and that was pretty much it. We started making our way over there, and when we got there, we actually noticed that another hunter had in our group had also gotten a deer at the same spot. So basically, we got the call. We made our way over there, and this particular spot is about 2 miles from the road, and it's like all uphill. Like
yeah,
basically, these two deer were killed on the top of, I'm gonna say, like at least like a 500-foot hill, like,
yeah,
which isn't like crazy high, but it's, I mean, certainly higher than you want it to be, and like 2 miles away from the road is not easy. Um, our camp does have a four wheeler, or one of our close relatives had a four wheeler at the camp, but there was like really no good way of getting it there. And also, the camp doesn't have a telephone, so there's also no way to tell anybody that we needed it.
hmm
So this is all kind of what plays into the story of trying to get these two deer off the mountain. Mike, what do you remember about this
yeah.
experience?
And so I do remember this was a time like really before smartphones. Like cell phones were definitely a thing. I remember that like the phone that I have, I don't even think that I had like I did not have my first smartphone yet. It was still kind of when like the texting pads. It was almost like back in like the BlackBerry times where you had like a pad that you would be texting
Mhm.
on like on your cell phones. And so I don't say that to say that we like nobody had cell phones. I think that not everybody had cell phones. Certainly not everybody in our hunting party had cell phones. And as you're saying, there wasn't actually a phone at the camp. And so being able to like get word to the camp that wasn't all that far away was actually part of the difficulty here. And it's it's just part of the story of trying to get these deer out of the camp. So or out of the woods. So Pat, you'll have to remind me here. I can remember kind of like parking the car and starting to make our way up this hill. Was it a gas line? It wasn't a power line, I don't think. Was it a gas line that we were? It was a gas line, not the gas line. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. So it was a gas line that basically went up this hill for approximately, let's say, a half mile or so. We there was like a four-wheeler path that went into a power line, which went into a gas line, basically.
Yeah.
All of which, accounting for, close to over a mile. And then, once we got to the area where we broke into the woods, it was probably like another half mile plus to get to where the actual deer were, right? Which were like kind of halfway down a hill at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Um,
can
no, go
go
on.
on with that.
No, go on.
Yeah, so I can remember getting ourselves up to the top of this hill and then starting to we had to make our way to the deer once we got up to the top of this hill and made our way in from the clearing. And I mean, it was you're right, it was closer to probably like a half mile once you kind of like are cresting the like that clearing to make your way down the hill and make your way down towards where the deer were. When we got there, I think that the deer had been gutted already. And it was at this point that we were there with one of our cousins, with one of our uncles, both of whom had, and both of the deer were right there, and we needed to figure out how it was that we were going to get these animals out of the woods. And so we're sitting here, we're kind of like in the middle of this hill. We had just come from the clearing that we were assuming we would be able to get the ATV too. And so we sent Pat, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we sent Pat out with the car to get back to the camp to get word to everybody that we needed the ATV. And the plan was for us to get the ATV to that gas line and bring it right up so that we could bring it out to that clearing.
Yeah, so
And so
basically what happened was I was sent back to, like, we got to the deer, we saw them, first off, two beautiful deer.
yeah,
Good size, probably like, 8 point, great 8 point bucks for Pennsylvania. They're beautiful deer. But not small deer either. I mean, they're not they're not light. So we got there and we were looking. We tried the phone, tried to call a few folks to see if anybody would pick up or get word out that we needed some assistance getting these deer out of here. Nobody picked up. We didn't have any word out. So the plan was I basically was gonna run back to the car, the 2 miles back to the car, hop in the car, drive back to the camp, and see if anybody was there, and see if we could get any help getting that out. We knew that there was an ATV available. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to get it up the gas line or not at that point. So that was going to be like the preliminary plan. The backup plan being we could drag the deer down the hill to the river if we needed
mhm,
to. So I got back to the camp. There were folks there, and I let them know, hey guys, we got to get these deer out of here. They, the other folks who are with the deer are dragging them up the hill, so they can take them out to the gas line. And the guys at the camp were like, oh no, we can't do that. Uh, the first off, driving those ATVs on the gas line is evidently a big no-no. You can get in trouble with the rangers for that, so you don't want to do that. Also, there's these big hills built into the gas line, so like if you were to take an ATV, they're put there on purpose to keep vehicles from driving up there. If you were to drive up those big mounds, you basically flip the ATV, which we didn't want any part of doing that either. So the plan was going to be to drive the ATV down to the bottom of the hill and get the deer down there. But once again, because there's no cell service and people don't have phones, we couldn't tell you guys that. So that added
Yes.
an additional complication to what was going on with you guys.
How right you are, Pat. We were none the wiser to any of this. And so there I am with my cousin and with my uncle, and we're sitting there trying to decide whether we're going to bring these deer up to the clearing or bring it down, because it wasn't, we hadn't like made that decision. And we're sitting there with thinking to ourselves, well, we've got a 50-50 chance here. And the last that we had left it, we were planning on bringing the deer out to the clearing so that we could get it onto the ATV. So there we go. We haul these deer right up to the as close as we can to that clearing. I start hauling the first one there. We get it within sight of the clearing, and we start on the second. We get the second one within sight of the clearing, and that's when we're told that the ATVs were not going to be able to make the grade, and they weren't going to be able to make their way up the hill. So we had just dragged two deer at this point, like a quarter to a half of a mile uphill, right into until we could see through the clearing. We could see it. It was like an oasis that was right through the trees. We could see where it is that we wanted to get it. And then, of course, Pat comes back after his drive and says, "Nope, we're not going to be able to get them out through the clearing. We have to actually bring them back down," which was far and beyond the most discouraging moment, because then we had just hauled these deer right up the hill. Now we're hauling them back down the same hill that we had just dragged them up. And we had to drag it right by the same spot, the same bloody spot in the snow where the gutting had taken place. The just like an hour or so before. And so we're hauling this thing like right back down the same hill, and it felt like forever before we got back to square one, where quite literally this deer had been gutted before. And then we did end up continuing along, hauling it back down. It went a little bit faster once we had Pat's help, being able to haul the deer back down. But we brought it all the way down, both deer all the way down to the river, so that we could then loaded up on the ATV that was waiting for us down there. Our family had eventually brought it over there, and we were able to load it up onto the ATV and bring it out of the woods and get it to camp. So that was the that was the story of hauling the deer up the hill and then back down again. But in the midst of all of this, we did get word that a third member of our party, one of our uncles, actually had got a third deer, and that it was a very, very large deer was what it was that we had been told. In fact, now that we had service, or I can't remember, maybe it was when we got back to the camp, our uncle was claiming that it was the biggest deer that had been shot at the camp in the history of the camp. And now one of those two deer that we had hauled up the hill and then back down again was claimed by our other uncle that it was the biggest deer that had been shot in the history of the camp. And so our one uncle, our Uncle Mark, got to claim that it was the biggest deer for about 20 minutes before our Uncle Matt had actually laid claim to supposedly the biggest deer that had been shot by the camp. So it was a very short period of time that Uncle Mark held that title, but hold that title he did for those 20 minutes. So
But yeah, after getting those deer down onto the ATV, I think I don't remember who, somebody hopped on the ATV to hitch a ride back out to the camp, and the rest of us walked it all the way back, the long way back to the car in order to hitch a ride and make it back to the camp in order to get there with the deer and kind of complete the day at that point. And yeah,
yeah,
after that, back at the camp, generally speaking, it's dinner prep, getting things ready, and then ultimately, with three deer on the ground, it was a lot of sharing stories about the deer, how the hunts went down, how specifically those happened, all the excitement, the camaraderie that kind of goes with it. Our camp also does have a deer pole. I know deer poles are kind of a thing that in the Pennsylvania area is kind of frequent. back in the day they were around all the time, but I mean I feel like they've kind of gone out of style to some degree. But you know we were able to put all three of those deer on the deer pole, which was pretty exciting to see all three of those hanging there. We got all the pictures and stuff. There were beers all around. It was really just a great afternoon, evening once everybody got back to kind of celebrate what that hunt was like. Mike, what did you do? You remember any of that? What were your takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, I can't remember. I was one of the people that was on the ATV, so I think I had earned my seat on the ATV after hauling those deer up the hill and then back down again. So I was one of the people that was on the ATV, making our way out of the woods. I definitely remember that. And then yeah, I remember. Like I had an element of pride in this deer that I had hauled back and forth, like up and down that hill. And then it was pretty clear that our Uncle Matt's deer was sizably bigger. But the like the camaraderie and kind of like there's a level of like healthy competition as these stories are being shared about and excitement, as you're saying, Pat, and the beers are cracking and everybody's all excited to hear the stories of how these deer ended up being shot, and the story behind the hunts, which like it already starts to go into lore, right? I'm sure that if you were to talk with any of our uncles or with any of our cousins that were involved in this trip, the distance that these deer were hauled up the hill and back down again grows every time we tell the story, right? And they all remember the story of hauling those deer up the hill and then back down again. It's like it's gone into like the hunting lore at the last tally ho. And there's something that I love about that. That's part of the culture of the hunt. That's part of
Mm-hmm.
what I loved about the experience. It's part of what I was writing about in the experience as well, and that someday I'm going to revisit in my writing as well. But that kind of like level of camaraderie was hard to beat and hard to match, and unlike anything that I've really kind of experienced since then. And there was it was again, I think that there's a reason why I always think back to this trip as being some of my favorite outdoor memories. And I think that certainly being there with the camaraderie of the hunt with those three deer there is definitely part of it.
Yeah, for sure. So other than that, the evenings at the camp are always kind of full of excitement anyway. Having three deer obviously helps, but the excitement level there is usually pretty good. There's dinner, or the dinners tend to be pretty lavish, right? We're talking about like ribeyes and lobsters and stuff like that. But there's always like some prep that's involved with that. There's usually a dinner movie or a pre-dinner movie that's going on, kind of while that prep is going on, while the potatoes are being peeled and such. And then there's also a post-dinner movie. So it's always, kind of which movie are you going to be watching? Which one do you care the most about watching? Lots of card playing going on. Whether it's cribbage or 45s or every different type of card game that we have going on there. Those are always special times, being able to have that excitement. There's a dartboard, being able to play darts with folks and have that level of camaraderie there as well. And then there's always the heated discussions or heated conversations that go on. I mean, Mike and I, we have some Irish and Italian blood in us. So for whatever reason, every conversation turns into an argument one way or another. And that, the camp is certainly a place that happens frequently as well. So, inevitably somebody says something about something, and then, there's a heated conversation that starts after that.
Yeah, but it's never like personal. It's
No.
never it's never it's never arguments that are like of a personal nature. It's all about like the rules of 45s and like the local like history behind 45s. And it's things that the people that are even involved in these arguments, the our family will argue about anything and nothing at all, and I think that that's kind of like where it is that it comes from. It's not like we're having these like heated like personal family arguments. It's these like nothing arguments that always end up getting so heated, where people are yelling at one another about like the history of 45s, and nobody really knows the history of 45s. That's part of the beauty of 45s. And so the conversations, the heated conversations, is that's definitely part of the camp climate. But in those evenings, I mean, in preparation for those dinners again, it's where I see myself in future years. Think that I take after our grandmother on my dad's side in that regard, in liking to be in the kitchen, and kind of like playing the host, and
Hmm.
being able to prepare the meals and everything. We did grow up, Pat and I, hearing about what makes a good camp movie, because every year, as our dad would be going off to after Thanksgiving for this same hunting trip that finally we were able to go on. There was always talk of like a good camp movie, a good hunting camp movie. It took me a while to realize that like anything that really what's meant by that is like any Tom Clancy story or like John Wayne movie, like that's really what it is. And that can veer over into like Robert Ludlum's like the Born Identity movies. Like those became like, when I introduced Dad to those, Pat, he was like, "This is a perfect camp movie." It's like, yeah, no, yeah, it's basically like a remodeled version of a Tom Clancy story. It's
Hmm.
basically like Clear and Present Danger with a different actor,
Yeah.
right? And so the like what makes for a good camp movie though, like again, that's part of like the climate. That's part of the culture that's there.
One
But you're right.
one thing with the camp movies is that it was actually a requirement for a time that everybody had to bring two movies to the camp.
Yeah.
So that was always part of it too. Like, what are your two movies that you're gonna bring, as camp movies? And then one of our other uncles started bringing like an entire duffel bag full of movies, and then it
Yep.
became a little bit less important for everybody to bring two because there was a whole duffel bag full of camp movies, so it was a little bit less important. But that was always something that I would think about is like, oh, what are my camp movies going to be? Which ones am I going to pick?
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's almost kind of like the desert island books
Yeah.
for those of us that are English teachers, right? And so, like knowing what your good camp movie is going to be, I think that there's kind of like an art to that,
Hmm.
and that there were comedy movies that would make the cut, but like a lot of them, as I'm saying, are these like Tom Clancy, John Wayne, like typically they fall into one of those two
Yeah.
camps. But when it comes to like the games and stuff, which is what I really remember from a lot of those evenings, 45s, darts, cribbage, as Pat was saying, and it definitely led into some heated conversations. That year, I know that it was over 45s. It was over a game of partners 45s that ended up getting particularly heated back in 2012, and that's kind of part of it. That's part of it,
Oh yeah.
and that's part of kind of the fun of it. But anyways, that kind of brings us up through to the next day of the hunt. So that we're no longer on Monday. We're moving from Monday now into Tuesday. I think that some of the excitement from opening day wore off, and so I was able to sleep a little bit more from day one onto day two, which was a godsend. And so, Pat, if you could bring us through kind of the start of that next day.
Yeah, Mike, I think part of it was probably the excitement had worn off. I think another part of it was probably you were just so exhausted from not having slept the previous day that you were just finally able to just like pass out.
Yeah, that too. That too.
But for the next day, right? We started out pretty similar to the first day. Alarms were still set pretty early, but not as early as opening day. I mean, with 3 deer on the pole, there wasn't quite the same level of motivation to make sure everybody was out there before the sun went up. Folks were a little bit less motivated to get out there because we had 3 deer, and as a camp, we were going to be bringing home plenty of meat there. Um, but we did get out. We did head out in the morning, relatively early, probably a little bit later than we did for opening day. And I believe that the first thing we did on that day was a drive through an area called Finn Hollow. Um, for those folks who are familiar with the area, but this area is kind of like it's basically just a hollow, right? It's a river area that has woods around either side. It kind of funnels down into like a river basin area. So obviously the deer are gonna use that as a great place to bed up and to maintain their cover and make sure that hunters aren't getting them. So it's a relatively common drive that the camp does. So we were gonna be able to do that and start off. It's close to camp. I think some folks drove over there in vehicles. Others walked over. I think it's probably less than a half mile. But basically walked through the timber along the river to a road on the other side and tried to see if we could kick up any deer for the hunters that were along the way. It was I remember it being pretty good. I remember from personal experience looking at it. I thought that we were going to be walking straight, and the river actually turned, which was a little bit confusing for me because I was trying to figure out why I was walking up a hill, and I should have. I needed to be veering in one direction a little bit more, which was confusing. I mean, I didn't end up getting lost. I still made my way out the way I needed to, but and I didn't end up I didn't manage to mess up the hunt for anybody else, which is ultimately the most important thing. But I remember being a little bit confused as I was walking through as to like why I was walking uphill right now. Um, but other
Yeah.
than that, that was the first drive that I remember from that. Mike, do you have any specific memories on that one?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because I had forgotten about that kind of like veering off course until you had just mentioned it now, and then it came right back to me. I can remember the bend in the river even, and why it is that we ended up getting off track there. I'd completely forgotten about that until you just mentioned it now. But I can remember it. It might have been in a slightly different part of the day. I don't think that it was quite when we were going through that first drive through Finn Hollow. I think that it was maybe like an hour or so later on. But there was this like right along Finn Hollow, or right in that same area. There were these kind of like wooded steps that were kind of like embedded into the side of a hill. And so it kind of like went down pretty steep, and then it flattened out, and then it went down steep again, and then it flattened out. And so we were doing kind of a drive through these kind of like steps, and we were kind of making our way along the step. And there were three deer. At least two of them were does that came kind of like down the hill and then made their way along the step a little bit before making their way like down to that next steep part. Now, of course, Pat and I don't have firearms. We don't have bows or anything like that, and so we were kind of just like left helplessly there watching these deer as they're coming down. The first deer that came down came right down kind of like the steepest part, and I swear in like a single bound just leaped right over the step and kept careening down the hill like right down on the other side. And it was one of the first times that I've been just like absolutely awe-stricken by like the ability of these deer that we're hunting. And like I was so impressed by like, good lord, this animal is able to just like clear this enormous step that like this
Mm-hmm.
path that we're walking along here, and just make their way without missing a hoof,
Yeah.
just like right down the next side of the steep there. And I was just so impressed by the first one that went down. The second one, I think, kind of like went down like a little bit and then kind of like scampered away. The third kind of like came down to the flat step and then ran along it like for quite a little bit, probably maybe like 15 yards or so in front of us before kind of like plunging down that same spot. They were all clearly kind of part of the same family, part of the same herd as they're going down the steps. And I can remember, Pat, that you at the end of this part of the hunt, you had turned to me and you said that you didn't care if you had to bring a knife or grapple the thing at its throat. The next time that you came into the woods, you were going to have some way of hunting these deer. And so that always stuck out to me. This image of my brother kind of like trying to jump on the back of a deer and slit this thing's throat because he was so determined to get a deer. And I think that determination has stuck with you, Pat. And sure enough, credit to you, the next time that you went on the hunt, you did put things together so that you were able to hunt. So I think that you get the credit there for for staying true to your word, and you didn't have to use a knife on the thing the next time that you went in there. So
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, we talk about these times and this introduction into hunting, right? And it's like these are this is like the hard stuff. This is like the not so fun part of hunting, right? It's like doing these drives where I mean, obviously we weren't going to be getting a deer, right? We didn't have a license to it. Our only opportunity, the best we could do would be to have a deer run at us like that, right? And have it within 15 yards. That was like pretty much best case scenario, right?
yep.
And
Mhm.
like, we did the hard work. We pulled the deer out of the woods. We spent days walking. We were cold, standing on spots, making sure we were where we needed to be, and if that isn't enjoyable, right, then having a license and being able to hunt is only going to be more enjoyable than that,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
Mhm.
it really kind of got me excited about what the opportunities would look like, being able to hunt, being able to explore these areas and figure out where I could hunt these deer moving forward and by myself moving forward from there. So it was really kind of an eye-opening experience about like what hunting is, what hunting culture is like, and being able to do that. So that was super cool for me. I mean, it was a lot of fun. But that moves
Yeah.
us into kind of the final day, right? So we did a handful of drives that day. Ultimately, made our way back to the camp. Helped fix dinner, got the movies all set up, played some games, and then ultimately it was the last night that Mike and I were going to be there. We were going to be catching an early flight home, but we wanted to spend a little bit more, quality time with our cousin. So we ended up having a few beers on the front porch and just basically shooting the crap and hanging out for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of just like playing games and chatting with our cousin Danny. I think our cousin Ryan, a little bit older, had already flown out at this time, or he had left like earlier on that day because he wasn't there, and he needed to make his. They were flying out, I think, through like Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
as opposed to we were going to be flying out through Buffalo, and so we have a couple of cousins, a couple of Carol cousins that are closer in age to us, that were on this hunt as well. And so being able to have some time with kind of the younger generation of Carols what was really awesome and valuable. And so we kind of spent some time hanging out and talking about kind of the future of the camp and what things were going to mean for us as kind of the younger cousins that were coming up, and looking forward to the opportunities that we were going to have to be able to go on these hunts and to kind of keep that camaraderie and keep that kind of like history alive. There were some hunters from like fellow camps that were around us that came kind of stumbling our way. Don't know if they had been drinking or not, but we did offer them a drink on our porch as they were kind of making their way to one of the camps that was right around on the other side of our camp. And we kind of shared with them some of our camaraderie and let them go on their way before we ultimately were getting a very early drive to the airport. I think that we were getting in the car at like 3 a.m. To drive to Buffalo so that we could fly out to Boston. And so for me, that was kind of like going to be the end of the trip anyways. I don't think I slept very much, if at all, up to 3 a.m. I think at that point we were out there on the porch until like past midnight, and
Yeah.
so it was only a matter of a couple of hours before we were going to be making our way back on our flight to back to Boston. And so we again, I rolled over rather than woke up, and kind of gathered my stuff, got in the car, and I think actually I slept on. It was like a little bit over an hour to get to Buffalo. I think I did sleep in the car on the way to Buffalo,
Yeah.
rather than actually sleeping in the nice warm comfortable bed. I think I slept in the back seat in the car on the way to Buffalo before flying out and making my way back to Boston. But that was and that brought the 2012 hunting trip to a close, and my how magnificent it was, and it's still just so like bold in my mind. But yeah, that's the hunting trip as I can remember it.
Yeah, no, I remember, that flying home pretty well. I mean, I did it a handful of times after that, right? Ended up being my kind of go-to camp experience, was kind of to go in for that first weekend, hunt a couple days, and then fly out probably after the second day of rifle season or so, or I guess the third if you think about it, if it was super early in the morning. So that drive became pretty familiar. Usually, our dad would drive me down up to Buffalo, be a couple hours. He'd take that time out of his day in order to do that for us, which obviously, I mean, he wouldn't mind doing that either. He enjoyed it. He liked being able to spend the time too, which was nice. But it was, I mean, honestly, it was one of the being able to spend that hunting camp time with you, Mike, was one of the highlights of being able to do it for sure. I mean, being able to do it as a family and being able to spend that quality time was really, really something special, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's been all of these years since I've been able to make it back, and I'm pretty doggedly determined to if not make it back, then to at least make some form of hunting family trip happen. And it's for the longest time being able to like emulate and repeat this 2012 hunting trip became kind of an impossibility with the school where I teach being on trimesters, and I had gone into the head of school's office a number of times to ask if this would be a possibility that I could take off, and I had been denied that opportunity a number of times. And in just in more recent years, we've kind of moved around our schedule a little bit more, and so it is looking like it's going to be a possibility that the weeks surrounding Thanksgiving could be a time where it might not be able to be the full-blown trip to Pennsylvania. I would love if it was. I've still got my heart set on that in a lot of ways. But with this experience in mind, and even just chatting with you, Pat, about it too, it did mean so much to me. And if I can find even the smallest little window of being able to make something like this happen, I'm gonna jump on it. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is looking ahead to even just this year. And it's been since 2012. It's been gosh, at this point it's been 13 years
Hmm.
since I've gone on that trip. And it took, maybe it took doing these podcasts, Pat, but what it's done is it's made me really want to experience that again. And so, if I can find that kind of like glimmer, if I can find that little open window, I'm gonna jump on it. I'm gonna see if I can make it happen. And so it would mean so much to me if I was able to do it. And so it's part of what it is that, for those of you that are listening at home, just know that this is I'm determined to not make this the last of the trips to the last tally ho. This is not going to be the last tally ho. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to try and keep that alive. And
Yeah.
and I think we're going to be able to make it happen. It might look a little bit different. It might not include a trip to the Neptune Diner. It might not necessarily include, maybe it involves flying into Pittsburgh or flying out of Buffalo or staying with some of my in-laws that are up in the Pennsylvania area. I don't know. But I'm pretty determined to make it happen. So
Yeah, no, well, you caught on to my secret plan here, was to get you hunting, Mike. That was the whole
yeah,
purpose of this podcast. So,
yeah,
no, ultimately, I'm excited for you to start seeing what I love about hunting, and
yeah,
the sooner, I feel like the sooner you can get in the woods and start looking at some of those things and experiencing. I mean, think of all the memories and all the everything that you got out of this one like 4-day trip, right?
yeah,
This is one trip 12 years ago when we're still talking about it. We're still talking about how great it was and what the camaraderie and all that, right? Imagine doing that every year, right? I
I
mean,
know.
it doesn't get worse. It only gets you only build more memories and have more time to do that, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that level right there is what I'm talking about, and hopefully we can make that dream a reality moving into this fall. Super excited to have, at least have the option to potentially have that be a thing, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, for
so
sure.
so that's pretty cool. But Mike, we're starting to close down towards the end of this podcast. What are any final thoughts about the camp, hunting? I mean, I know we just kind of discussed some of those final thoughts here, but any kind of uh, bring it home points here?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the thread that got lost there was actually my the writing that I was doing for this story. And so to kind of like use that to kind of like tie things off, I ended up doing quite a bit of writing on that flight. At that point I had slept in the car, and so I was up again when I was on the plane. And so I did a little bit of writing when I was flying back, and took the next couple of weeks to kind of like get my thoughts in order, and wrote the piece that I ended up writing for this class. And senior year at Boston College, the writing workshops are pretty small. It's like 10 to 12 like people that are in each of these classes. And our professor actually had us over to her house for kind of like a portfolio sharing. And you could pick any of the pieces that you had submitted. And I had a couple of pieces that I had submitted for this class. And that I was choosing between, and I actually ended up sharing part of the story that I had written from this hunting trip while I was there. And so there was kind of like that one last level of camaraderie that was experienced, and almost kind of like cathartically by me sharing kind of like part of this story with another group, with another table around a different table with totally different foods, that was in like a small like suburb of Boston at our professor's table, that she was gracious enough to have us over to the house. And I can remember reading part of this story about kind of like the climate and the atmosphere of the camp was the part that I had read. And so like the stories kind of like live on in that as well. And so part of what I love about this podcast, and part of what I love about hunting and fishing, is the storytelling, right? And that's kind of like was always in the back of my mind as I was going through this experience at the camp, is kind of like the story that's behind it, because there's so much character and there's so much like energy that's behind this camp, and that's behind the camaraderie, and that's behind the hunt, that I'm just so it's like a drug, Pat. It's so invigorating, and there's just something to that I always want a little bit more of. And that's why when I think back to this trip, I keep thinking back to like those great memories, and wanting to not necessarily relive it, but wanting to like see what that looks like in the next part of my life. Like what does that hunting camaraderie experience, what does that look like now for for this Mike that's in this new stage of my life, as a father, now that I'm growing my own family, as somebody that's in my own professional career, needing to like take the time off if this is going to be something that I value, which I do. And it's kind of that reminder that like all of our uncles, our grandparents, our dad would need to take time off of work in order to be able to make this happen, because
Hmm.
it's something that they value. And this is something very much that our family values, and I'm not ready to let it go. And so I think that that's part of kind of the passion that I have behind this and making it happen, is not wanting to let that go, and wanting to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think that part of that is also we are the younger generation. Well, we were the younger generation. We're not
Yes.
so much the younger generation anymore. But if we aren't gonna step up and do this, right, then our kids and the next generation may not do that also, right? And at some point in time, there's gonna be somebody who says, "No, this isn't something that I find valuable," right? So that's also like, from my perspective, is kind of carrying that torch, right? finding more people who are going to see the same values that you and I are seeing in this, and being able to share it with their families and their friends, and be able to continue to build this hunting community and this hunting culture, right? I mean, both of us have young children. I mean, obviously they're not going to be getting into the woods right now, but I think at some point in time that might be something that they want to do, right? And having the opportunity and having the resources available to them to do that if they want to is something that I think is important, and something that we should try and continue to have going on for them, right?
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts on that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's almost kind of like a responsibility. It's like a generational responsibility, and if you don't, it's gonna end up being lost. And so yeah, I see value in that for sure. And it's it's hard because if it's going to be something that you're going to value, it's going to be something that you almost kind of have to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I'm at is like if this is going to be something that I'm gonna make happen, I'm gonna need to fight for it, and I'm willing to. And so it's kind of it's kind of places your priorities and shows you where your priorities lie. And if this is the type of thing that you value, you have a bit of a responsibility to keep that going.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree, Pat. I totally agree with what you're saying. And I mean, I'm just determined to make it happen. So
Very good. Well, Mike, I think at this point we probably talked this one through about as much as we can.
yeah,
We gave a full recap of the hunting cap story from a number of years ago. We've gone into how we feel, how we how we're feeling about those points, how we're going to try and continue this as we move down the line. I know I'm certainly excited as we move into the fall, as we move into hunting season. Any last comments before we call this one?
no. I mean, it was just so fun to recap this one, and I mean, it took us 2 episodes. So if there's anything to that of how much these stories and just how much this camp means to us, I mean, I think you can just take a look at just the timestamp of how long this conversation has been going on. And I mean, I could keep going. Just the memories and the experiences at that camp. So it is we're right here on the precipice of kind of like making our way into the next hunting season, into the next fall. And so it's one that kind of like awaits with this certain level of anticipation and excitement. And I love that we're kind of keeping one foot kind of like grounded in some of these memories and in the past, while the other foot is still kind of like charging forward into the outdoors and getting ourselves ready for the next hunting and fishing endeavors that we're going to be getting into.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I love that. The one's a foot in the past and the one charging forward. That's perfect. All right,
Yep.
Mike. I think this is going to call it for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We did a lot of talking about this, but I think it's something that we value and something that we had a lot of fun with. But until next time, get outside. Have some fun out there. Thanks for listening to the East Coast Hunt, Fish, Hike podcast. If you have questions, comments, or have an idea for an episode, feel free to follow us and reach out over social media. Don't forget to rate, review, or tell your friends about the podcast. And until you hear from us again, get outside. Have some fun out there.